Pitching from a downhill slope with the ball sitting on a nice lie, it seems doable, even easy until it's not. Most treat this shot like a regular situation, meaning a level lie and end up fatting it or blading it. This situation calls for some understanding of why it's more difficult than the standard pitch and then some modifications in your approach to ensure more success. Let me show you why it's more difficult than the standard shots and unpack the steps you need to take to dominate downhill lies. Heading any shot from a downhill slope becomes more difficult, and it likely becomes a round wrecker for you because you're trying to take the concept of hitting off a level lie and employing it or using it on this downslope. And while having our balance on a level lie relatively 50-50 or a little bit biased towards our lead leg is advisable, it's the primary reason a person might face trouble when they're standing on this downslope pitch, or they're hitting this downslope pitch, whether it's a 10-yard pitch from a downslope or in this case a 30 or 40-yard pitch downwind to a tuck pin. The reason for that is when I'm on this slope, which is probably about a 5 to 7% grade, I feel as I'm standing on it all of my pressure on my left leg. And so if I've got 80% of the pressure on my left leg just standing naturally where my body is erect this way, then in order for me to get my balance 50-50, I actually have to start to lean away from the slope. When I lean away from the slope, it's that factor and factor alone that causes me a great likelihood of hitting the ground before I get to the ball. So if I just use the hula hoop to demonstrate this principle, right, this is the arc the swing's taking, traveling around me. Let's imagine I'm standing on level turf right now. The bottom of the arc will basically hit the ground underneath the center of my body. But yet, when I try and redistribute my balance so I'm 50-50 on this 5% to 7% grade slope, downslope, that's what I get. And so essentially what happens is as I get 50-50, I lean my spine against the slope, so my spine's not perpendicular to the slope at this point, and the bottom of the arc also moves back with it. And so the landing point of the club becomes far more likely to be into the ground early. So the ground behind us, or to my right here, to my trail side, is closer to me because of how I'm standing now than the ground to the left of me. I'm likely to chunk it, or I'm likely to try and avoid chunking it and then hit it fat. So that's the reason why we don't want to use the concept as if we're hitting on a level lie, despite the fact that the ball is sitting really nice here. There are 4 adjustments we need to make, and we need to make them and understand why they're impactful. The first is static and dynamic mass distribution. So what do we mean by that? So counter to getting 50-50, I want my mass all the way up over my lead leg. That means, yep, I've got 95, 98% of my body pressure sitting over my left leg. It feels like my right foot is very, very light. That would be the static component. So I get my balance over my lead leg and it stays that way dynamically. There's even a little sense as I'm striking this shot that I'm going to stay or even increase my knee flex to ensure that I keep low to the slope and the pressure sits on my lead leg. So that would be the static and dynamic mass distribution. There's also an adjustment in ball position to stack the deck in our favor that we're going to catch ball before turf. So where a standard pitch shot, if I was standing on level turf, might be played from center to slightly back of center, or even slightly forward of center. For this particular shot, I'm going to go back center of stance. So now I've got 95, 98% of pressure over my lead leg, and then I've got the ball maybe one club it inside my trail toe. And I'm not going to go super wide here. The wider I go, the more likely I am to have that swing bottom back out too early. I'm going to go narrow, ball back, pressure left, stay left. The next piece is the swing direction. Whereas on a standard pitch shot, it's fairly normal to see someone swing the club backwards and forwards parallel to their stance line, as demonstrated by the red hula hoop, as if that's my swing arc. The adjustment we're going to make when we're playing from this downhill slope is we're going to tip the swing direction more left relative to our stance line. The reason for that is when I do tip the swing direction, you can see the part of the arc, so the descending part of the arc moves further away from the ground again. Again, that's another factor that falls in our favor that causes us to avoid getting that club to hit the ground too early. If we know that that club's not going to hit the ground too early, we can be assertive with our strike. We're not defensive trying to avoid touching the ground. The last piece is demonstrated. These white sticks are not only demonstrating the swing direction tip that I just showed you, but they're also demonstrating the arc shape. So the backswing should be more upright, like a V shape, and then the downswing and the move through impact, particularly the move through impact, should feel like it's a very flat arc. So we go from narrow or V-shaped to very wide and C-shaped, similar to if I just stepped on the front of the hula hoop here. So here's the abrupt movement up with the club head in the backswing. That's as a function, I'll show you here in a second, of hinge and arm lift. And then this flattening piece right here, where we try and keep that club head really low to the ground, that's gonna be felt through the arms and through this knee. The knee flex helps me keep the arc low to the ground. Stretching my arms down the slope also do the same. Enough talking, let's put it to action. Let me walk you through it. I've got pressure down, lead leg. I've got ball back. I'm gonna go swing direction left. I go hinged, some amount of hinge, keeping the club outside my hand path. And then I'm gonna go down the slope, just like so. Just like so. Hits into the knob, spins a little bit, ball's trickling down right beside my practice shot to right about 8 feet. So I've turned what likely could be a round record shot into a par opportunity, or if this is a par 5, into a birdie opportunity, just based on those foundational elements. Now there's one last thought that I'd give you, and oftentimes it comes as a question. When a person sees me hit this type of shot, they wonder, well, it came out really low. That's the slope causing that trajectory, right? So I've got loft on my face, some amount of loft, dynamic loft on my face as I'm striking through, but that club is really sliding down the slope and it's creating a lot of what we'll call shear or slide underneath the golf ball. That causes it to come out flat with a lot of spin. But there is an option if we wanted to try it. This is a very advanced concept, not that we aren't talking about advanced concepts when we're dealing with downhill pitch shots, to try and create a little bit more trajectory. And that would be creating a little bit more bounce, like you're trying to get the arc deep into the ground with the same principle. So rather than sliding like you're trying to skip a rock at the bottom, we're gonna thump the turf a little bit more, so you can expect a little bit more turf interaction, a little bit more divot. This is how it works. Let's see what trajectory I create. Kick that stick a little further forward. So I've got the same principles, pressure here, swing direction, thump, stay low. I've got a little higher trajectory. I carried a little bit further. Because of that bounce effect, I created a bit more ball speed, but I got a little higher in the air. So if you need to create a bit more trajectory, you can create what we'll call deflected loft. When that club's coming down and it's thumping the ground, that ground is having an effect on the club simultaneous to ball contact, and it jumps up into the golf ball and produces this little bit higher launch even on that downhill lie. So take these concepts, practice them, and you're sure to turn this shot, this situation, into something other than a round wrecker. While this shot can be a round wrecker, it's actually one of the easiest situations to turn from liability into strength, and by applying the key concepts I just explained, you're well on your way to getting these shots up and down.